Hello and welcome to Digital Photography Online at Northampton Community College. I'm James Small and I will be your professor for this semester. Just wanted to introduce myself, say hello, and go over a few things like you would typically in a first class. So the first thing I want to take a look at would be the class syllabus. So the syllabus I have emailed to you, and you should also be able to find this on Blackboard. So one mistake I just recognized is it says false, and to change that. So here's my basic information, contact information for me. I recommend you try to reach out to me first at my email address. This is my cell number, so I can be contacted through my cell. I do not have a phone number on campus for you to call. So you could also text me at this number. I teach this same class, digital photography, on campus, as well as black and white photography, and I am on campus Monday through Thursday. So you can arrange to meet with me by appointment on one of those days. Here's some additional online support information that might be helpful to you. Some important information of things you will need. You do need the textbook, as well as MyArts Lab with Pearson's eText package. And the information here is laid out for you. You'll also find this on Blackboard as far as how to connect with it. Particularly important for this class is your need to have a DSLR camera. It is important that it be an actual DSLR camera and that you have full manual controls in addition to controlling your aperture shutter speeds and also your ability to shoot in RAW mode. A fixed lens, 35 or 50 millimeters will work. If you have additional lenses, that would be fine. A lot of cameras come with kits. And a zoom lens that, say, runs from 20 to 80, something in that range, will also work for the majority of your work. You definitely need a memory card for your camera. Some way to back up your information is important, and access to Photoshop, Bridge, as well as Adobe Lightroom. Here's some tutorials on the use of Lightroom, additional web links on some information for you on some basic history of photography, and some information about digital photography in general. Some of the rest of this is basic information you'll find on any syllabus in a course that you would take here at Northampton Community College. These are the student learning outcomes. So these 8 things is what we want to be able, for you to be able to do successfully at the conclusion of this class. So it's important that you're able to do them all. General college policies, you're going to find that unless this is the only class you're taking at Northampton, that these are going to be the same on all of your syllabi. So I'm not really going to go through a lot of this. Cheating and plagiarizing is absolutely a concern. You do not, it's inappropriate to steal someone's work, photographs, papers, whatever that may be. So just skipping forward a bit and looking at the assessment plan assignments for this particular class. The basic breakdown is laid out for you here. So there'll be 10 class shooting assignments, each equaling 20 points, giving you 200 points there. There'll be 11 wikis, each worth 6 points, so 66 points. Your shooting projects are going to be based on technical skill in addition to creative thinking. Submissions that are late will be deducted 2 points. Each day the assignment is late up until a maximum of 3 days, and at which point you will receive a 0. So it is important that you keep up with your projects. Since this is an online course and we will not have on-campus critiques, we will be using wikis as a critique method. So for each project you'll have to upload 1 or 2 photographs. You will have to make statements in regard to your work, as well as have make comments on other students' works as well. So again, this needs to follow the same category, and everything needs to be done on the same time frame. We will have 3 quizzes throughout the course, each worth 20 points. There will also be a reflection paper. It's an informal 3-page paper about photographs that you go and see. So you'll need to find a photography exhibition, whether at a museum or a gallery, to complete that project. And here is a description of your rubric for it. The final portfolio will equal 60 points, and this will be a culminating project that should reflect the knowledge you've gained throughout the course. It will include 8 total digital images of a cohesive body of work. So this will be toward the end of the semester. The criteria for that is laid out here from a scoring standpoint, some of the things that I'll be looking for in relationship to it. In addition to that portfolio submission, the following week, after I've graded it and given you my critiques of your work, you will submit a discussion board on Blackboard with 3 questions that need to be answered in relationship to your portfolio. So you need to explain how you successfully interpreted the subject of your final photographic portfolio. Again, this needs to be a cohesive body of work. And you need to defend any criticism, describe how the photographs in the portfolio demonstrate what you learned about creative camera work and controls in the class. So this will be the major final piece, and then here again is a breakdown rubric for scoring in relationship to it. There will also be a final exam similar to the quizzes with multiple choice questions, which will also equal 60 points. So this gives you a basic overview of how you can score an A and where your level of completion and work needs to be. The course calendar for the actual class is laid out here. There's a little more information on format of the assignments. Again, this is a studio class. So you are gaining the same credit for this class as the students that meet in the digital lab and work on campus. So your projects need to be made for the class. You need to keep up with the class and turn all your work in on time. Again, it's important that you participate in the critiques as well, with some additional information here about some additional sources for you to find extra information. Lynda.com is a particularly useful and valuable online resource that if you want to subscribe to, there's a lot of great video tutorials that might help you with your projects. When you complete your projects, you will be submitting everything through Blackboard. And this syllabus, again, can be downloaded from Blackboard. In addition to that is pretty much all this information will also be found on Blackboard in the different assignments. So for the first week of class, which is what we're starting with, I'm going to ask that you take a look at your textbook, take a look at some of these particular links here to get some basic information. Now, one of the most important things here is for you to check out your camera. Make sure you know how it works and know its general functions. So you want to check your camera to make sure all of its systems are functioning properly. You need to understand how to control your camera. If you do not know these things, then it's going to be important for you to look at the manual for the camera, Google the camera online, see what information you can find out about it. The camera needs to have the ability to have manual focus. It should have control of your ISO settings. So you want to check all these things and make sure that you have them all and that everything is working appropriately. So this is a bit of an activity here for you to essentially practice using your camera. If you're a regular user of your camera, this is not a project really that's going to be submitted. So this is more about getting familiar with your camera, getting a sense of how the camera works, understanding all of its different functions. I recommend you read this carefully. So again, you want to study the effects of this and make sure it's working correctly. Now, the first actual project is the introductory selfie wiki. For this, I want you, each of you, all of you, to take selfies and upload them into our first wiki. Introduce yourself to your classmates. Tell us 3 things about yourself, and this will also be an opportunity for you to get to know one another. That will be the first graded project, and again, that is due this first coming weekend. All projects will be due on Sunday at 11:59. When you submit your projects, there is some basic shooting information here, labeling information that I would like you to follow. You should name your files, name files as followed, with your last name, the assignment, example 2, again, this is assignment 2, so 2A, B, C, etc. Add my name and as well, and then you have your name, my name, and the assignment name. Then take those photographs that you're going to submit and put them into a folder. Use a zip compression on that folder in order to make it easier for it to upload. For the first week's class assignment, we will be focusing on aperture and depth of field. So this is one of the most basic aspects of photography that is particularly important for you to understand, and students sometimes do have some difficulty with this. Aperture is also known as f-stop, and these are numbers that you're going to find on your camera. Depending on the brand of camera you have, the Nikon uses the letter A, and I believe the Canon has a different lettering system that they use. So it's important that you understand how to control your camera. So aperture priority or preferred AV is what it is, I believe, on a Canon, A on a Nikon. What this is going to do is it sets your camera in a semi-manual mode. It is actually the camera is going to control the shutter speeds for you, but you are going to control your apertures. So every time you change your aperture, it will change to the appropriate shutter speed. Set your camera for this at 400 ISO. ISO 400 is a very standard sort of middle range spot. It's a general recommendation. You may need to change it in accordance to the amount of light in a given situation. For the starters, we'll start with JPEG. We'll work with RAW a little further into the semester. So the basic premise of this project, if you look through here, is to understand how the f-stops, F, as you see here, changes controlling your depth of field, meaning the focus. So for this, at f16 or f22, you will have a super sharp focus, whereas at f4 or f5.6, you will have a much lower focus in the background space. So read that further, look at your textbook for further understanding. As we move through the semester, and again, we also do a wiki for each project. So these are going to be weekly projects. Again, everything will be submitted in the same manner. It will be due on Sunday at 11:59, and the projects are already ready for submission on Blackboard. The wiki is also going to go along with that, and you're going to select 2 of your photographs that you think most interestingly satisfy this particular assignment. You will also need to go and make comments on other students' wikis. So this gives a basic breakdown of the rubric for the camera work and where the scores essentially will fit in. So then we'll move on to shutter speed in our third class. Shutter speed and aperture are the 2 primary functions of the camera that determine light. The third is ISO. In this particular case, you'll now be working with shutter speeds, which work on fractions of seconds, or if they're long exposures, potentially a full second or more. Anytime you are using a shutter speed that is less than 1/30th of a second, in fact, I would even recommend 1/60th of a second, you need to use a tripod. A tripod will also be required for many projects. So take a look at this more closely, and again, you will also be utilizing a wiki for this project in the same context. In our fourth class, we will combine aperture and shutter speed and focus on it in a more creative manner. I'd like you to take a look at this list of artists, look some of them up, try to come up with some ideas. This is also when we will have our first quiz on week 4. From there, we'll move on to light and exposure and exploring creative exposure controls. Your camera has different metering modes, and those metering modes have different effects on the way the camera evaluates light. So for this project, we're going to be working with those metering modes, and this is also going to be an opportunity for an introduction to your understanding of the histogram, which is also, we have some YouTube videos here that focus more on that as well. This one here is on meter modes, and these are on the use of the histogram, which can also be used in Bridge as well as Photoshop. And again, you'll have a wiki here also. From there, our next is called the strongest light source. So this is going to be working with artificial light, meaning the controlled lighting, studio lighting of some kind, whatever you're able to come up with and set up to take your photographs. So that'll be a portrait project. So you will need someone to model for you, and you will need to use some kind of studio lighting setup, whether it's just shop lights, some sort of controlled directional lighting that you can control. So again, there are references here to the textbook for each of these projects that should give you some additional help. Again, there'll also be a wiki here for this as well. In class 7, we'll be moving on to experimental night photography. Again, a number of links here, things for you to look at to give you information about and some ideas about. The basic ideas here is shooting at night. When shooting at night, it's obviously going to be dark. When it's dark out, you're going to need to change your ISO. You're also going to need to do what's called long exposures, exposures that may be a second or longer, so a tripod will be required. The 8th class, we will focus on HDR, high dynamic range. So this is actually an approach. There's again where you'll find information on the textbook. This is an approach where you take 3 separate photographs at a minimum at 3 different exposures called bracketing. Those are combined into a single photograph for a more dramatic effect. So again, there's your basic outline for that. And our second quiz will also be in week 8. It's actually after week 8 that we have spring break. After spring break, class 9, seeing like a camera. Again, there's some information here from the text. We will focus on these particular artists here, and you will choose an artist's from the list here, or if there's someone else you'd rather do, you'd need to let me know and make sure I approve that they are a legitimate fine art photographer. The objective here is that you're going to emulate their work. So you're going to make a series of work based on their portrait work. So I would recommend you look up each of these people and find someone that you'd like to focus on. We will also do class 10 then is non-destructive imaging, editing a surrealist landscape. So this will require working with Photoshop in this one specifically, not that Photoshop hasn't necessarily played a role in the others, but this one in particular is in fact requires Photoshop, as Lightroom does not work with layers. So this is a layering project where you need to take multiple photographs and combine them together using layer masks and different editing approaches, focusing on the idea of surrealism within the context of photography. In our 11th class, we'll not be shooting this week. That's when you'll be doing your reflection paper. In classes 12 and 13 is when you'll be working on the final portfolio shooting assignment. And there's some additional information about that here. So then we will also have a wiki for that, and you will need to, the first thing you're going to have to do there in class 12 will be to submit your proposal. What is it that you want to do for the project? And the proposal needs to be clear and concise and make it clear what your intentions are. Then you'll have 2 weeks to do that project. After submitting it, there will be the response to the instructor's final critique. And there's some additional information about that. So I'm going to do a final extra credit project at the end of the class. Will be a smartphone photography project. So that'll be an opportunity for you to earn some additional points. And it will be set up, however, just like all the other classes. We also will have a final exam, which will be during exam week, which will be similar to the quizzes, but a bit longer. There's some additional information on Pearson's MyArts Lab, and that is a look at the syllabus. Hi again. So the other thing I wanted to bring up is a look at Blackboard. So if you take a look here when you log into Blackboard, mine probably looks a little bit different than yours as an instructor. But over here you're going to see this is your course home. You're going to see this is where announcements will appear. Syllabus, if you go here, you should be able to redirecting, and then you should be able to download the syllabus from there. The learning content right here is going to be the major source for almost everything. And if you click on learning content here, you're also going to see that MyArts Lab Course Home, I have that right there for you. So if you simply click on that, that should link you directly to Pearson. That should then enable you to create an account or set up an account. Mine's going to automatically open it up already because I already have my Pearson account and I'm already logged in and so forth. But that should be a direct link for you from right there. So then the things that I just went over with you on the syllabus can also be found here. So as you scroll all the way through here, you'll see that again, this is broken down at each class, at each step along the way, right through to the final exam. Now, I do not want you working ahead. Take it 1 week at a time. Again, if you click here, you're going to see some additional information for our first week. So the weekly assignment and a little breakdown for it. Here's the reading assignments as well as some tutorials for you to look at. This is a very valuable PowerPoint that I would strongly recommend that you download and take a look at. This could be useful to you throughout the course. So then here again is the basic camera work setup that I've already discussed briefly with you. Again, what I'm really looking for here is this is not an actual project that is due, is for you to go through, make sure that all of these things function properly on your camera and that you have everything you need. There's another link to MyArts Lab. The other thing, because this is an online course, you will need to use the student verification. So what this does is it verifies that you are who you are and so on. So you're going to have to go through that process, and there's going to be one of those appearing at each week. The introductory selfie wiki is going to be our first project, and that is due again 11:59 on the 22nd, a week from this coming Sunday. So if you click here, you see the basic information. You click here and this will take you right to it, and you can name this, create the wiki, upload your photos, and this submit, and that's how this is going to work. So from there we can just, again, learning content is going to contain all the projects. So if you want to scroll through it at all, these all should be available to you. Your first shooting assignment that will be due the following week as explained here. Again, this is 2 examples of depth of field photographs, everything in focus. Here is, again, the apples in focus, but the far back ones are out of focus. So again, some breakdown on that information. Notes about submission, again, telling you how to name them, showing you when the submission is due. And here is the actual breakdown on the assignment. Here is the link for the wiki, and again, the student verification for class 2. So if you click on camera work for Aperture, you're going to see all that basic information. Here's where you could view the rubric, and here you can write a submission, you can attach a file, comment, and submit your work, and that will be set up that way for each class. So again, learning content is going to be where you're going to go each week to find this information. Okay, so now I would strongly recommend, not just strongly recommend, in fact, I would say you need to have, you really need to have Photoshop. And again, the prerequisite for the class was that you should have some basic working knowledge of Photoshop. In addition to Photoshop, when you got Photoshop, it should have automatically come with Adobe Bridge CC, whether you downloaded it or not. What Adobe Bridge CC is, if you don't know, is a file management program. And what it does for you, if you look up here, you can see there's computer, my hard drive, and you can see links through Dropbox in this particular folder of photographs that I have here, and some favorites that I have over here. What this does is it enables me to look at full screen previews of all of my photographs at once. it, in addition to that, gives me this information over here, which is particularly important, your metadata information. Now this information is also information that I want to see on a weekly basis with your projects. So make sure that you never delete that by mistake. So again, we can look at this photograph here, and we can see that I took this photograph at f8 at 1/8 of a second. You can even see the metering mode I was using. You can see that I shot at an ISO of 400. We can see that my file size there. You can see down here the file name. You can see that I made this photograph on the 13th of January. You can see my file size. So there's all this information here. And this is really valuable that Bridge offers this to you. Now the other thing that Bridge will do, if I simply double click on that photograph, is it's automatically going to launch that right into Photoshop because it's directly linked there to Photoshop. So now that it's in Photoshop, I can begin to edit and work on this picture in whatever manner that I might want to. If you go to File, you can also browse in Bridge. So there's a direct link back to Bridge from Photoshop. So it's a very useful program. If you did not download it, I would strongly recommend you download it. The other advantage it gives you, if you're using an Apple as I am, it should work on a PC in a similar manner. I have a card connected, so under computer there's my hard drive, but I can also go to the card that I have in here from my camera, and you can see what images therefore that I have on that particular card. And again, it just links as a general setup here to all of the files and things that I might have, things that I might want to look at or open up and work on. Photographs. Now it also works with the other Adobe programs, so if one of these were like an Illustrator file, for example, then it would also launch Illustrator with that image. Now the other program that you should also have, in my opinion, is Lightroom. Lightroom is also by Adobe, so it comes with the suite, if you have the Adobe suite. It gives you a more streamlined, straightforward way to edit your photographs. Photoshop is very much about layering, and it really works with more complex editing approaches. Whereas what Lightroom does, so I'm currently in the library, and you can see some of the same photographs here that I do a lot of real estate photography. So these are some photographs I did for a real estate agent recently. And when I'm in the library here, I can go to import, and then it's going to import any files that I might have available. I can set up folders and collections over here, and then we can go to develop and we can begin to edit the photographs. Now the advantage to this editing process by comparison to Photoshop is that if you look down here across the bottom, what we have is a line of images, and it's somewhat similar to Bridge in the way that we're able to scroll through and look at these pictures all at once. Now in Photoshop, if we go back to Bridge momentarily, again in Photoshop, if I want to do some editing on a particular photograph, I have to open that photograph, wait for it to open into Photograph. I've got this warning based on my profile, and now I have to begin to edit my picture individually, and then I have to save it to commit those changes. The Lightroom, on the other hand, what it does is it enables you to simply, I can now look at these controls over here, and I can make a couple of quick changes, and boom, I can scroll right to the next one, and I can do the same thing. Now the other advantage here is it's a non-destructive editing approach, so I can just click the reset button, and it has simply gone back to its original state. So prior to any editing I may have done, boom, there they are. So this is a non-destructive editing approach. What that also means is that your photos are never affected or touched, whereas in Photoshop, anything you open, edit, and save, you actually have made changes to. So I would strongly recommend you also learn to work with Lightroom. In relationship to your editing choices, for the most part, I would say that it is in fact a personal choice. And the main thing is there is not always a one-size-fits-all in relationship to editing, so keep that in mind. But try not to over-edit things as well. So take it slow if you're not familiar with photography much at all. And I would strongly recommend that you explore, practice, play, and try to enjoy the course. So again, welcome to photography online at Northampton Community College. If you have questions or anything comes up, again, don't hesitate to reach out. Take a look at all the information that's laid out for you, and I look forward to hopefully getting to know you all online this semester. Thanks, and see you next time.